President Trump delivering strong words for Iran today. What would be the consequences if the Iranian regime ultimately doesn't come to the negotiating table in time? Joining me now to discuss is our panel, former Ambassador James Jeffrey and retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Robert Maginnis. Great to have you both with us. So today, the president appearing to set a 10-day deadline for Iran to make a nuclear deal with the United States. Here's what he had to say.
And we do have some work to do with Iran. They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. You can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon. And they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they've been told that very strongly.
The president added that bad things will happen if Iran doesn't make a deal. So, Colonel, the big question on everyone's mind right now is, will we be going to war in the immediate future? And how are you assessing the current situation?
Yeah, we certainly hope we aren't going to war anytime soon. Diplomacy should rule the day. The president said, yes, 10 to 15 days, but he's allowing the Geneva outcome to settle in with the Iranians a bit. I know IAEA met with them today, and they started to talk about the particulars of the nuclear program, because that's our primary concern. The Israelis are concerned about missiles, and of course we're concerned about proxies in the region. But we already, no doubt, have solid plans in place. We know what the strategic targets are. I suspect those targets include IRGC headquarters, some of perhaps the political headquarters. A number of other possible targets would really put the regime on its back heels. Now, if we do go in, clearly those will be hit first, and then there'll be a pause to see if there's a reaction. Unfortunately, I don't believe that the organic uprising that perhaps many of us would like to see is well enough organized internally to take advantage of this instability that might be caused by a strike that the U.S. would deliver to Tehran.
Ambassador, how are you assessing the situation? Do you think that the president has already made up his mind, or is the military buildup perhaps, simply just applying pressure to Iran to take the U.S. more seriously with these negotiations?
Thanks for having me on. I think the Colonel laid out the situation very well. From my own work with three presidents and war or peace situations, they never have taken the final decision until they take the final decision, typically just before. It's clear to me, however, that building up a military force this size, the biggest since 2003 when we went into Iraq, that it would be extremely unfortunate for the whole security situation of the region if the Iranians refuse to compromise, refuse to give us at least part of what we want on the missiles and especially the nuclear program. And then Trump said, okay, then we'll just send those ships home because they can't stay there indefinitely. So this is a risky moment. This is not a one-off attack. As the Colonel said, they would have to target many political and military objectives, and the Iranians have thousands of missiles that they can aim at our bases along the Gulf.
Now, Colonel, from what we can see right now, obviously you see a Navy presence. We have an air presence with the Navy, with the aircraft carriers, as well as special forces being reported in the region. However, not a ground presence like we may have seen as the ambassador said back in 2003. What form of military action do you think would be most likely if the president were to do so?
Well, we go after their command and control, clearly. The Israelis have taken out much of their air defense, but we'd also go after their oil infrastructure, which is really their only source of external economic assistance, especially from the Chinese. And so those targets are near and dear. Reagan went after oil infrastructure and really got their attention. And I suspect, that we've gone through the same calculation. So, we'll have to wait and see. Now, we have facilities, 19 specific facilities in 8 different countries. They're all subject to either missile or proxy attacks. And any special forces, of course, would be countering the proxies. I do not anticipate at this point, because we don't have the ground force there, that we would even bother to go in by the ground. So, we'll have to wait and see how they use these strategic assets to cripple the regime. Now, once again, I don't think there's an organic capability internally to really take advantage of that, but perhaps we can be surprised.
So, Ambassador, how, what would the determination be of the scale or the potential of a potential operation?
Boy, this is a tough question I've been dealing with since Vietnam 50 years ago. This would be a major strike. He has massed these forces. Some of them are defensive to, as the colonel said, fend off missile attacks on our bases and probably to keep the Strait of Hormuz open from Revolutionary Guard naval attacks. But nonetheless, this is a huge force. It will do dramatic damage to much of Iran's infrastructure. The problem is, I saw that repeatedly in Vietnam with many of our attacks. We did tremendous damage. And they kept coming. So that's the problem he has. He doesn't, as the colonel says, want a land war. He doesn't have the troops to do it, at least in the Middle East, and it would be a fatal error. But absent putting boots on the ground, you cannot achieve decisive results. I'm an Army guy, and I'm a bit biased, but that's how I see it.
Well, earlier today, we saw President Trump committing $10 billion to the Board of Peace, which is a coalition that he's put together of world leaders that are overseeing the rebuilding of Gaza. Here's what the president had to say on this.
This just started. This is our first meeting. But every dollar spent is an investment in stability and the hope of new and harmonious. It's a region that's so important, it's so vibrant, it's so incredible. The people are so incredible, but we want to have a harmonious Middle East.
He did also allude to the fact that this Board of Peace may be overseeing or keeping an eye on the United Nations as well, which has come under much criticism for not living up to their main goals and objectives. Colonel, what will the $10 billion ultimately go to, and how do you see this Board of Peace playing out?
Well, I think, as Rubio said today, there's no plan B for Gaza. So, we're going to have, this Board of Peace under the direction of President Trump go in there and to begin to rebuild much of Gaza. And the additional funds will have to obviously flow. It's been absolutely dismantled. And so it's going to take far more than $10 billion to put it back together. I think, quite frankly, Steve, this is a slap at the United Nations, which is a bureaucratic, incompetent organization that just couldn't do what President Trump once accomplished. And other nations that are lining up with us today have indicated their willingness to move quickly and to stabilize the region so that the people there can return as quickly as possible to some modicum of a common future life.
Ambassador, you understand the way the UN works better than anyone. Trump today says that the Board of Peace will work with the United Nations at times. He positioned it as a possible alternative to the UN. With him investing billions of dollars into the Board of Peace, where do you see this ultimately heading?
It's heading in a good direction. First of all, I worked on an earlier version of this plan, including with the Israelis, and it's not only plan A without a plan B, it makes the most sense. Now, 2 points. One is, and your viewers really should know this, there's a link between the threats we're making to Iran and what we're doing in Gaza. We won a regional war with our allies and friends from Israel to the Arabs to Turkey against Iran and its proxies over the last 2 years. That is dramatic in its significance. And what we're trying to do in Gaza, as well as with the Iranians, is to follow up and lock in that victory over the long term, so we're not constantly going back in, as I and the colonel have done many times in that region. Now, in terms of the UN, it's actually a step back. The Board of Peace was set up officially by UN Security Council Resolution 2803 several months ago. And then Trump galloped off with it and started talking about it, doing all kinds of things. That's the reason why the Europeans, who are key, if but nothing else, funding Gaza, are only there as observers. They're weary. And what Trump said in his own bombastic way, but still effectively, is we're going to work with the UN, with the Board of Peace. It's not competition to it. In fact, he said, we, I personally, Trump, are going to be going away, but the UN will stay on and we want to help it do better. So he is basically taking, as he does so often when he realizes he's ahead of his headlights, taking a step back, re-embracing the international community, hugging Marco Rubio, and away we go. I mean, it's a roller coaster ride, but what is happening is real success for the United States and for international security. I want to underline that.
Former Ambassador James Jeffrey and retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert Maginnis, greatly appreciate both of your insights.